the focus of the ABLE work is to move communities towards a systemic action learning model that was developed by others, not by us. And in a systemic action learning approach, you are constantly focused on understanding and defining what the problem is. You're designing solutions around that understanding. You're implementing in real time in ways that you're tracking your implementation effectiveness and bringing data in, so you're adapting as you go. And then when your implementation is over, you're asking yourself the critical question, did this matter? So in an action learning process, learning actually happens along all phases of the work, defining what the problem is, designing what kinds of solutions you need, implementing, as well as in the final act of learning and adapting as you go. And so what we train people in is sort of that action learning cycle and how there are critical learning questions and steps at each step of the way so that your work is always adaptive as you go forward. When you're trying to engage in systems practice, what we're really seeing on the ground from individuals that I would consider to be actual role models to me as I watch them in this work is that they really transform how they're present within their community and the role that they take on. So this is far more than using some of the ABLE tools or protocols that are on our website, but instead really shifting what you do in relationship to other people in the community. One of the things that we see as most effective is that successful systems practitioners really bring into every conversation the critical questions. So they don't have to have the answers. What they have to do is to know the kinds of questions to ask to get others to engage in this kind of exploration. And so you're asking questions around defining. Who do we need to talk to really understand the problems in the community? You're asking critical questions around design. Do we know enough to move to action? And how can we really transform our community and disrupt the status quo? You're asking critical questions around implementation. What do we need to know and how do we gather that information to ensure that our implementation is effective? And what do we need to know how to adapt it to be more effective moving forward? And finally, questions around learning. Did our effort work? And if not, what do we need to do next? And so effective systems practitioners are asking those critical questions in every space they go into, informal meetings, meetings they convene in their workspace with their peers, and they're also looking for as many opportunities to weave information across those settings as they can. One of our mottos in our work is to leave no string unstrung, and so that they should constantly be looking for opportunities to weave information, resources, wins and failures to other stakeholders and settings so that they are helping to create the kind of feedback loops and improvement cycles that are needed within a community. I would say one of the most important ones is to recognize that you will never know enough. You will always feel like there's more to learn before you move to action. And that what is critical to recognize in systems work is that the system is always evolving, and that what you understand today may actually not be true tomorrow. And as a result of that, in this kind of work, what's more important is to move to action quickly and to observe how the system responds to that work so that you can adapt in real time. So I would say that's part of one of those tips. Another tip would be related to recognizing that we don't know all the kinds of solutions that are needed. So we have to allow ourselves to be both innovative and disrupt the status quo, but also create the norms within communities to fail. And that failure should happen fast, so we should be gathering data as we go and adapt, but it's allowing ourselves to be able to recognize that we're not going to always succeed, and sometimes that's challenging to do with such pressure to achieve outcomes in today's world. I would say another top tip is to recognize that capacity in communities is very fleeting. People move, sectors shift, the purpose of work often changes, and as a result of that, investments in capacity building of people alone is insufficient for transforming communities. And that we need new models for thinking about what kind of capacity is needed and whose capacity needs to be built. One of the things I've realized in our work is that building the capacity of funders, so that they can play a critical role in supporting this work in new ways is really essential. I would also say that learning in all stages of this work is really essential, and creating infrastructures and communities to support real learning is important. The formal coalition model that we've all trained ourselves to implement, where we have as many stakeholders as we can around one large table, is not the kind of format that supports real problem solving and learning in action. So we need multiple tables in communities connected together, where we're engaging lots of diverse actors around shared agendas, so to start to move this work forward.